Ukraine continues to devolve. Now, right now, they're technically in a ceasefire. The Ukrainian government on the one hand and the separatist rebels in East and South Ukraine on the other hand. Technically in a ceasefire. But understand that shelling of Donetsk continues during the ceasefire. I don't know how you have a ceasefire when you literally are firing at the other side. But it does continue. Now, the Ukrainian government is frustrated because separatist leaders were chosen in an election on November 2nd. The West says that it's illegitimate because it explicitly violates the terms of the truce, amongst other things that are violating the terms of the truce. You have that. You also have, importantly, continued reinforcements coming into eastern Ukraine from Russia. So a couple of things I want to talk about is, one, close calls, both in terms of naval and aerial activity between NATO forces and Russian forces continue. U.S. Air Force General Philip Breedlove said, in the air, those interactions have multiplied by some accounts as many as 3 times. We now see larger Russian forces participating as opposed to 1 or 2 bombers in the past. Those are peace bombers, I'm sure. And then in terms of the reinforcements that I alluded to, no? So. Drop teddy bears or something? Kiev says a column of tanks and truckloads of troops crossed into East Ukraine from Russia last Thursday, and officials from the Organization for Security and Cooperation have spotted armored columns moving in the past few days. Now, understand that they're hardly a completely unbiased source, but it is confirmed by other sources. A Reuters correspondent saw a convoy of about 50 military trucks without insignia on Tuesday carrying equipment such as artillery, guns, and missile launchers near Mankiewicz on the eastern outskirts of Donetsk. The OSCE also reported a sighting of what appeared to be the same convoy. So it looks like massive rearming and reinforcing, which is what we feared coming into the ceasefire, was that this was going to be a situation in which the Ukrainian government on the one hand would try to gain back a little bit of the stability it needed going into a future conflict, but that the rebels would use this opportunity to cement their control over the cities that they currently control, which they do continue to do, while being reinforced and supplied from Russia without a possibility of counterattack against those reinforcements because there's currently a ceasefire. That was our prediction a short while ago, and it looks like that is exactly what is happening right now. And it looks like the players on all sides of this are gearing up for future conflict.
Putin has balls, because didn't he last time, like maybe at the 70th anniversary of D-Day, when he was with the world leaders before, and there were specific escalations of the crisis in the Ukraine? Because here he is at APEC, patting Obama on the back or trying to, and giving everybody who walks by him a shawl, like, you know, hey, you cold? Here you go, let me give you a hug. This would be when this would be when he remember no, it was when he was meeting with Medvedenko, when he was meeting with the Ukrainian president. There's no way I got that guy's name right without planning to say it. It's not that far off. But when he was meeting with the Ukrainian president,
I remember the meeting that you were
so,
referring
like,
to, yes.
you know, and they're like sitting there together, and the Russian troops are moving. So here he is, you know, at APEC, at the Asian Pacific Economic Cooperation, and you know, while most of the tension regarding him is about, a large part of it is the Ukraine, and he'd be like, oh yeah, no, come on, let's just all get along. Why can't we all get along? Go. You know,
and they are going as APEC
that's a Putin-like move.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to see this as anything but both the current situation, the establishment of the ceasefire, and the activity beforehand as anything but a massive win for Putin. I mean, if they had continued the conflict, if it had continued at a heavy pace, there was a lot of casualties, over 4,000 people have died in the conflict so far, then it's possible that the sort of counter push to that entire campaign could have reached beyond taking back the disputed areas of Ukraine and possibly done something about Crimea, which everybody seems to forget he is now occupying, he took control of. But the fact that they were able to... That's gone. It's gone now. But it might not have been if the single conflict had continued all as one. But setting up the ceasefire and putting off the eventual war that almost certainly seems like it's going to come, if not this year, then next year, allows him to sort of step back, and that has become the new status quo. That they control Crimea. It's no longer up for debate. Nobody is talking about them giving back that territory or taking their forces out of there. That I haven't seen anyone in months even mention the word Crimea. And so regardless of what happens, when the ceasefire is inevitably broken by one side or the other, I don't think that it really matters which, he has won on Crimea, which was the most important component of this because it does have access to water. But and it looks like with ISIS and the election and all of that, I can't imagine Barack Obama doing anything to dislodge the current influence that Russia has over eastern Ukraine, or really feeling any incentive to even try at this point. The American public doesn't care. They barely cared when it was happening.
Right, but that also means you can almost do something about it. You don't need
without pushback.
You don't. Well, you don't. I mean, first of all, he's likely to get. That's one thing where taking a strong stand against Russian activity in Ukraine is something where he might get some help on. I mean, there are. Whereas foreign policy,
on the right.
Yeah, foreign policy is always the area where we used to get along best. We don't now. That, by the way, is something else that's the Republicans' fault. But that said, there are still moments when actual national interest trumps politics, rare moments. It might here. So, I mean, taking a tougher economic stand against Putin, that's possible. It's could seem as largely a win for everybody. So, I wouldn't preclude some sort of. I mean, we're not taking military action. We know that.
I don't know. A lot of very prominent Republicans implied a couple of months ago that they would face off against Putin. So if one of them gets into the White House, supposedly they might be willing to do that.
Sure, in 2016, I
doubt it'll happen.
Easy to talk about.
Yeah, and look, as I alluded to earlier in the show, our economic sanctions, amongst other international variables, do seem to be having a negative effect on the Russian economy. But as you point out, accelerating or strengthening those, that might cause enough pressure on Putin to be willing to listen to some of our demands. But I don't see that happening. And in fact, Merkel of Germany says that there's no current plans to increase the economic sanctions against Russia. Now, she doesn't represent all states. It could be that the U.S. could unilaterally do something. But at this point, that doesn't seem to be the case.